Very excited for our keynote session today. You can see from the title, we're going to have a really important theme that we cover. I'm going to turn it over to Nick Watson to introduce our keynote panelists.
The keynote panel is entitled Embodiment and Health, and the three contributors are Tracy, Trothen, Kristin, Sheehan, and John White. The panel examines how Christian thought and practice can reimagine and redirect the culture of sport to restore spiritual, ethical, and embodied health. Let me just tell you a little bit about each of the contributors. Dr. John White is a Christian ethicist who serves as the Harold and Dottie Riley Associate Professor of Practical Theology at Baylor University's Truett Seminary. He directs the seminary's General Chaplaincy and Sports Chaplaincy Ministry program. He co-founded the Faith and Sports Institute with his wife Cindy to explore the integration of Christian formation and sport. His work spans various forms of institutional chaplaincy, including military, healthcare, prison, and sport. He's authored numerous academic and popular level publications and is currently co-authoring a book with sociologist Dr. Matt Voss on the theology and sociology of sport. Kristin Sheehan has served as the program director of the Play Like a Champion Today educational series since its inception in 2006. The program's mission is to elevate the culture of youth sport to be character-focused and developmental in nature. Entering their 20th year of service, they've trained over 180,000 coaches and sports parents. Wow. That isn't in the biography, but wow. Kristin has co-authored several publications and presented Play Like a Champion Today workshops in 42 US states, in Canada, Rome, and Uganda. Kristin earned a master's degree in theology and psychology from Notre Dame, and there she was a varsity athlete on the cheerleading team. And finally, Dr. Tracy J. Trothen is a professor of interdisciplinary ethics at Queen's University, jointly appointed to the School of Religion and the School of Rehabilitation Therapy. She's a supervisor in clinical spiritual care and an ordained minister in the United Church of Canada. Her forthcoming co-authored book, Understanding Religion and Artificial Intelligence, Meaning-Making in the Digital Age, will soon be released and includes a chapter on sport. She lives in Canada with her husband and 2 cats and enjoys time with family and friends hiking in the woods and being overly invested in hockey and baseball.
Thank you, Nick. It was good to see you the first night, and just reminds me, we go way back 2005 when you came to little Xenia, Ohio. It's always good to see you, and thank you for your example at this intersection of faith and sports. Good morning, everyone. I want to just take some time to kind of name and frame this session. I'm actually the moderator. I have the easy job, but we have 2 great panelists that have already been introduced to you. And I think this will be a challenging, but hopefully a hope-filled conversation for all of us. And I kind of want to just name, I guess, really kind of a paradox or polarity, that all of us recognize the beauty of sports. We love sports. It's probably what first attracted us to it. But as much as sports can do incredibly good things as far as furthering human development and flourishing, we also know that there's a dark side of sports, a foul side of sports. And so there's this blessing of sports, but also the bane of sports. Sports can heal pain, but many of us were former athletes. They can also cause pain sometimes. And so there's this dialectic, there's this challenge as we inhabit this space. And I mean, think about this. Sports can cultivate joy, dignity, resilience. We've talked a lot about that in the different sessions, but it also can reduce a person to metrics, market value, or mental edge. And I think the overarching question, maybe perhaps a perennial question that we're trying to answer today, into what are we making people in sports? To what end? What's the goal, the telos, the purpose? And today's athletes are really being formed in environments that aren't just shaped by coaches and competition. I mean, those are kind of the halcyon days, right? Those are the golden days when it was just coaches and competition. But there's trauma, technology, and the insatiable drive for performance. And so those are some of the tensions as we step into this. We're going to talk about AI today. There are systems today that can track your glucose in time. There are AI systems, right, that simulate matchups. There are AI systems that predict injuries. Now, some of this is actually a blessing to us when technology is used well, right? Coaches are being advised by predictive algorithms. Athletes are marketed, they're ranked, and streamed before they're even old enough to vote. And so once again, one of the challenges. And I think the title is fitting. It's very relevant because as Christians, we're supposed to live fully embodied lives. But if we're not careful, sports has a way of forming us that can be disembodied, right? It divests the dignity that God has given us in creating us in his image. And so that's one of the challenges. And so what we want to do today, we want to really take these ideas, we want to put them at the center of our discussion and really offer an alternative vision. We want to think more deeply about these matters. We don't want to see athletes merely as implements or tools or instruments, right? But we want to have God's image of each one of us front and center. And I think you'll be excited. Our panelists have already been introduced. And so whether you're a scholar, a coach, a parent, or a person who once just loved this game and maybe lost something in it, I invite you today in our conversation because this is more than sports. This is about the kind of humans that we're forming, what we're becoming, right? And the kind of future we want to see in sports. I'm going to go ahead and draw your attention to this. At the end, we're going to have a Q&A time. There's the QR code. Go ahead and take a picture of that now, and then we'll revisit it. I will have the slide up again at the end. So each of our panelists will come up, and then once they're finished, I'm going to have a little discussion with them to kind of be a little kind of warm up, and then we'll open it up to the entire audience. All right? Thank you. Come on up, Kristin.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Nick, for that warm welcome. It's a pleasure to be here with John and Tracy and all of you. And I'm excited to share with you what Play Like a Champion's mission and vision is. So we believe that sport should be accessible to all children, regardless of their athletic ability or their family's income. And we also believe that the sport culture should be wholly developmental. And yet, there are causes for concern. This first bullet point is of real concern for us. The youth sport industry is a $40 billion industry annually. This is what we call pay-to-play sports. And what that does, as a result, is only 1 in 3 children from a low-income family will have the opportunity to participate on a team. In our world, we think that is a social and a moral injustice. And when kids do get onto teams, there can often be a toxic environment where we have coaches and parents putting too much pressure on the athletes, and whether it's living vicariously through them or putting too much emphasis on the outcome. And as a result, many children will drop out early. In fact, 70% of children will drop out of sports completely by the age of 13. In our world, we're trying to encourage physical literacy, which is the desire and the confidence to participate in sports for one's whole life. And so that statistic is very troubling to us. Actually, I want to start with this, and I'm going to go backwards. I moved some slides around, and I forgot to do that here. So the Vatican does have an office for sport. It's in the Dicastery for Laity, Family, and Life, and they sponsor some international summits. In September of 2022, they had a summit called Sport for All, and Pope Francis addressed our group and said, sport is good because it brings people together in an encounter and it allows for virtue formation, although he cautioned that sport only does this when it is run in sync with the Christian community. And if it isn't run in sync with the Christian community, better not even to have a sports program as part of the church. And so we just talked about those causes for concern, and how do we ensure that sport is run in sync with the Christian community? At a conference in 2015 at the Vatican, Pope Francis addressed that group and said, it was a conference on coaching, and he said that educators must be educated, formators must be formed, so we must train our coaches to coach in light of Christian values. And so at Play Like a Champion, we talk about coaching as ministry. When we train coaches, we help them stand in the shoes of a minister and talk about the overlapping qualities of coaching and ministry: formation, mentorship, leadership, discipline, prayer. Yes, prayer belongs in our teams and in our communities. And so we're all called by our baptism to service, and ministry is a service on behalf of the youth, their families, and the school community. And we stand in Jesus Christ's shoes when we coach. This is often a revelation for coaches. And so we help them to see how they can do this. We follow the mantra, play like a champion today. So it begins with play. In Proverbs 8, we see wisdom playing at the conclusion of creation. So theologians will talk about this as kind of a dance between the Creator and humans. And so we remind coaches and parents, because sometimes they can drain the joy, they can drain the delight from the experience. And so we help them to remember that the play is joyful. They're games, it's supposed to be fun, and not to make it so much work. And that we don't want to focus on the outcome so much, because the joy is in the play for the sake of playing, intrinsically rewarding in and of itself. Okay, so John alluded to trauma in our world, and we want to raise coaches' awareness of what trauma looks like and the neuroscience about trauma. So we teach near-P science. And when I talk about what this is, I'm going to start with the A. The A stands for adverse childhood experiences. These are periods of stress and trauma in a neurobiological period in a child's life. And that goes up to the E. What happens is when this stress happens, it presses upon our DNA, and then it impacts our responses and our behaviors. That's the neuroscience of it. The good news of near P is the R. This is resilience. And this is the capacity and the ability to rebound from an adverse event and actually come out more strengthened, more resilient, more confident. How does resilience get built? Sport is an excellent place to do that, if it's done in the right light. And that's where the P comes in. The P in sports stands for two things. First is positive childhood experiences. If we're creating this safe space for kids, it should be joyful, positive, where kids can heal and form connections. But it only happens if coaches are also a P, and that is a protective factor. Protective factor, the neuroscience research will tell us that the number of trusted relationships that a young person has will impact their health outcomes. So coaches can be those protective factors if they coach in a trauma-informed lens. Now, if you remember the picture that was up of the coach when I was talking about the causes for concern or toxic environments, that coach is likely eliciting incredible trauma on those athletes. And so there is a better way. Sometimes we hear about that's motivational to yell or to be emotionally abusive to our athletes, and we say, no, it's not motivational. There is a better way, and that is to coach in this trauma-informed lens. Here are the 6 principles. Number 1, safety. The sport environment should be physically and psychologically safe. Number 2, trustworthy. Are you a protective factor as a coach? Can your athletes trust you? Number 3, peer support. As a coach, are you encouraging the athletes to care for one another and support one another? And then 4 and 5 go together. That is, as a coach, is it my way or the highway, or are you allowing collaboration and mutuality? And that will increase the choices athletes have and give every athlete a voice, not just your most talented athletes, but every athlete. That is an empowering environment that will help kids build their resilience. And then finally, the sixth one is to pay attention to any cultural, historic, or gender issues so that differences are not divisive, but they're actually an opportunity to encounter and to grow in learning about different nationalities and different types of folks. So that's the trauma. Now, when we say play like a champion, how do we encourage the development of a whole champion? Sure, we're thinking about the scoreboard, that's part of the experience, but how do we attend to the whole athlete? And so we offer an approach that we call GROW. GROW is based in self-determination theory, which is a psychological theory of motivation. Psychologists studied what is motivating to athletes, and that is when they feel competent, connected, and in control. And so we put those words into sport language. Athletes feel competent when they set goals, they achieve those goals, and we celebrate that achievement. They'll feel connected when they have positive relationships in the sport environment, coach to athlete, athlete to athlete, team to opponent. And they'll have some control when they have ownership or voice over their play. And that equals the desire to be motivated, to strive to be successful, to win. Now, how do we root these psychological words into a theological language as well? And that is through the cardinal virtues. So the cardinal virtues are ancient. They go back to Aristotle. St. Thomas Aquinas brought them into the Catholic tradition, and they relate to the elements of GROW. So we're talking about goals. We're talking about fortitude, hard work, perseverance, determination, courage. We're talking about relationships. We're talking about that virtue of justice. And then finally, we have prudence under ownership, so that we learn how to make good decisions. And then we relate temperance, that cardinal virtue of temperance, of balance and perspective, to the winning. So we need to keep the winning and the losing in proper order. So we say play like a champion, that would be good, but we say play like a champion today. That is the spiritual element here. And I'd like to invite you to click through the QR code, our gift to you, some sport-themed prayers and scriptural activities. Share this with anybody in your community, any coaches or parents you know. And I'm going to talk about this idea of today. So it's a word for time, and the ancient Greeks had two words for time. The first was chronos, which is chronological time. So we can watch the minutes and a clock pass, the days in a sports season progress. And they had another word for time, which was kairos. Kairos is a moment. It's a God moment. It's a moment that athletes become the best version of themselves, where God acts in that opportunity, whether it's an incredible physical performance or it's a coming together of the team when they've had a difficult defeat. And so these moments, we say to coaches, remind athletes of God's presence in that moment, of God helping them to become their very best. So we have a new Pope, Pope Leo XIV, and some of you may know he's a baseball fan. The city of Chicago had a little bit of a feud over whether he was a Cubs fan or a White Sox fan. Turns out he's a Southsider, so he's a White Sox fan. And he's already talked about the value of sport. And he said that in a society that we know we have an isolation epidemic, sport brings us together. It takes us from me to we. And he also talked about the value of competition, that competition teaches us the art of losing and the virtue formation. And here's my segue to my co-panelist here, Tracy. In a highly digitized society, how do we retain the humanness of sport? And I'd like to invite Tracy up. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. It's a delight to be here. How are you doing this morning? Okay, all right, excellent. Okay, I want to talk to you a bit about artificial intelligence and sport, and that whole question that Kristin was talking about what it means to be human in sport, and what our values are, what's most important, and what we're doing in the face of this very, very quickly evolving technology. Because without thinking about it and being intentional about it, we are apt to be swept away in it. So this is a pause break to think about it a bit. So there are many ways that AI is changing sport. It's affecting athletes, in good and maybe questionable ways, coaches, officiating, and fan experiences, and also those of us who write about sport. It's affecting us too. It's affecting everybody. There's a ton of things that I've got on this slide here just as examples of AI for you. I'm going to just highlight a few as examples so that we're thinking about all the different ways that tech is starting to change sport in some ways, maybe help it. I mean, we have everything from AI-powered equipment, self-lacing running shoes. Any reactions to that? Is this going to make it better or not better, right? We have AI sensors to help rowers optimize their stroke efficiency, so we can up the training and the feedback in real-time data for almost every athlete in every sport. There are smart t-shirts that can be worn and other fabrics that have sensors built into them to give that feedback in real time. There are capsules that can be swallowed if you're at the elite end and have access to all this equipment that you swallow and pass through your system slowly over hours and pick up data around how your digestion is working, around your heart, your organs, in response to whatever else is out there and whatever you're doing. Digital twin technology is becoming bigger and bigger. So marathoner Des Linden, she had a digital twin heart made of her heart, which enabled her trainers to see exactly how her heart responds to all sorts of different stimuli. So for example, if she ate a meal of mac and cheese instead of steak, and they're able to measure and see and then predict how this could affect her heart function when she's running long distances. So this is really promising in many ways, in that it can not only be good for athletes to predict what a given heart might do, because each person's heart is a bit different, but it can also be technology that is then extended outward to other people to watch our health and monitor it. So there's all kinds of different things to consider here. VR, AR platforms, virtual reality, augmented reality platforms can provide immersive training and simulated situations. So if you can't go to a place where you're going to be competing, you can create it using an Oculus pair of glasses. How many of you have ever tried Oculus glasses? Okay, so they're pretty cool, right? Like, you put them on and all of a sudden it looks like you're in this whole other space. It's 3D, and you can mimic and recreate a sporting venue and even other players, right, if it's a team sport. There are neurological brain implants, exoskeletons, and advanced prosthetics are big, so we can help people who have very limited or even no mobility potentially to get out there and do something that would be a slower sport perhaps, but would be something. So there's possibilities for greater inclusion here. There's also possibilities for, reducing it down to the small things and maybe micromanaging and thinking more linearly and reductionist about athletes. We also have AI chatbots that can help support athletes' mental health. There are studies that have shown that these chatbots can indeed reduce loneliness, which is a growing epidemic. In coaching, AI is important too, especially in communication platforms, assisting communication, assisting predictions for how players might play a certain game given certain conditions, and then interventions that could be used. Recruiting also ends up being something that can be done with AI, and we're going to look at maybe some of the issues that might arise around that. Officiating too, you can get closer calls made. We all know this. It can delay a game too, as these calls are reviewed. It doesn't work as well in all sports. For example, in hockey, where there's a lot more motion and lights and sensory things happening, it's harder to use it and rely on it to help officiating. So AI can also always make mistakes. How many of you have heard of AI hallucinations? Most of you. So it's a hallucination because it gets presented by AI like ChatGPT, if you've ever used that, as fact. Those of us who teach in the classroom have students presenting these wonderful sources that we've never heard of at the back of an essay, and I go and look it up and go, oh no, it doesn't exist, it's not real. It was used by ChatGPT and not verified. For fans too, there are lots of things happening. There's improved accessibility for fans with different disabilities, like vision challenges, hearing. It makes it easier to engage with different technologies that we have. AI is being used to promote gambling and elevate gambling and sales to a new high. So one of the things we need to look at, and I alluded to this with the whole issue of recruitment, is bias in AI. So AI draws on data sets that we create as humans. So everything that AI gathers is stuff that we humans have created. So we humans have all these biases and limitations and flaws. We know this, right? We are very imperfect. The trouble is AI acts like an echo chamber for these difficulties. They become bigger and amplified, and then we don't question them as much. And then these biases start to rule more of our behavior, and even including the AI that we create and that we use. So these images are images that I got Claude, which is a large language model, to create for me with prompts. My first prompt was, draw me an image, give me an image of hope in sport, because I like to talk about the function of hope in sport. I think it's really, really important. And what I got at first were, well, you can look, right? Almost all male, almost all of a certain younger age. And then I gave it more prompts, deliberately, I had to say. I want to see a variety of ages. I want to see more women. I want to see, and this was as far as it could go. And then it started doing things like losing people's fingers and reducing leg length and everything weird. But the fact is that there are biases that we have as humans, and these biases are getting made bigger in our technology. So that when we use AI for recruitment purposes, for example, we might automatically rule out certain people that aren't generally recognized to be the norm of the most successful athlete in a given sport. And there are lots of reasons, as we know, for why that might not be the norm. So how do we see past AI? Well, first of all, we have to ask ourselves, what are our values that we bring to the conversation, and how do we get those values? So just pause for a few seconds. I know many of you have done values exercises before, but name your top even 2 or 3 values right now. They don't have to be right, just what are they? And one way to get at them quickly is to ask yourself, what would you like your obituary to say? What do you want to be remembered for? So we grab onto those values, we know them in the moment, especially when we're focused on our obituary. But there are things that get in the way on a daily basis of knowing what our values are and making decisions about then how to use things like AI in sport. What drives our values? Technology itself drives certain values, promotes the values of utility and efficiency. So we get technology to make our lives easier. This in turn reinforces that we want our lives to be easier, that we want to take less time doing things, that we want to get things done quickly and easily, and this connects up to values right now in our society of profit and winning. I see the biggest danger of AI in sport as enhancing and being amplified, driven by those values of power and winning. Danger is, as AI proliferates, those values could get bigger and bigger and squeeze out those other values that came to your mind. Especially from a Christian lens, what do we really want sport to be? How do we want to include people? How do we want to hold people in our traumas and all those things that make us vulnerable humans? So what does it mean to really accept, be made in God's image, that you have intrinsic worth as you are? And then how does that shape the AI conversation? How do we then approach what AI is good for sport? Think about trauma-informed sport, as Kristin pointed out. Who counts as an athlete? Who counts as a person? Who do we want to include? Any of you heard of the enhanced games? Hands? Okay, you're going to hear more about it because it's now slated to happen in Las Vegas in 2026. Marketed as the beginning of a new era in elite sport, a fearless stage for athletes to defy limits, rewrite records, and reimagine the future of sport. What do you want the future of sport to be? The enhanced games, it will be anything goes. They promise to have healthcare, medical doctors on board to help make sure that there's no harm done to the athletes who choose to use anabolic steroids, who choose to use deep brain stimulation, who choose to use whatever it is, nutrigenomics, so that we know exactly what we should eat to power our bodies the best. Take away that simple pleasure of saying, but I really, really, really just want that bacon sandwich and it makes me feel better. That the immeasurable things, everything's reduced. So what do we do with the enhanced games? There's a lot of money involved in the enhanced games too. If you break a record, you're guaranteed to be given at least $1 million US. So Google that. Just to wrap up, there are some risks of AI in sport. Again, AI can make it more about profit winning and easier to cheat. So one way that cheating could be enhanced is the implantation of different devices in the body and in the brain that can hold substances and do a slow release of a substance throughout a day or a week to enhance performance, but be programmed to be at undetectable levels or to be paused remotely if there's going to be testing happening. So there's lots of different ways. We're going to see many more creative ways to get around the rules if you want to. There are already lots of ways. It's just going to get to be more so. So are humans tools to do the absolute best at sport, or are we more than that? And how do we engage this technology to enhance that sense of intrinsic worth of all people, and also to keep the joy and the fun of winning and competition in sport too? The echo chamber effect of implicit bias has the potential to push people who are on the social margins even further out. So there's a lot of dangers and risks. There's also some real benefits, right? So AI can help us to speed healing from injuries, recovery. There's even smart bandages that can speed healing of a wound. It's quite incredible. Our healthcare system will benefit from sport, from AI and sport being tested. AI could even make sport more eco-smart. Right now, it's running a deficit, but it's possible that AI could help us to be greener, support the environment even more. AI can make the sport more fun and engage fans more, people with all kinds of disabilities or different preferences and needs. AI can up athletic performance of participants at all levels and improve officiating and coaching. The one I like the most is AI can improve accessibility to sport. There's, in so many ways, there's so much promise there. So we need to be intentional. How do we shape tomorrow's sport? Gamma, which is an AI program that can help you with slides if you want a slide created, gave me this. In the rapidly evolving landscape of sports technology, intentionality is key to how we reshape sport with emerging AI. With the global sports tech market projected to reach $41.8 billion by 2027, AI stands poised to redefine every facet of athletic endeavor. So how do we be intentional about our faith lens? How do we engage in this conversation and work of creating AI and reshaping sport?
All right. Thank you so much. What a rich conversation that you put before us. I really like just the interdisciplinary that you drew upon theology, Protestant tradition, Catholic tradition, psychology, neuroscience. And so I thought we'd just jump in really quick just to warm us up before we go to all of you. Please use that QR code. I saw some questions are coming in, so that's cool. But let's go to so much in both of your presentations, but let's go to just the grow model that you proposed and what you're all doing at Play Like a Champion. I was really intrigued with this, especially it's counterculture, and yet it affirms one of the things that we would all value, this pursuit of winning. So that's often put first. So how do you help coaches, parents, and athletes embrace this deeper formational vision that you're casting and trying to help them to inculcate and internalize?
Yeah, so it has to be about more than the win, right? Of course, we're striving to be victorious. It's a social contract of sport, but we're not always going to arrive there. And so using the opportunity to help motivate your athletes to do their best from a psychological lens is also going to help them grow as better people. So we just raise coaches' awareness and parents' awareness too, because sometimes for the parents, it's all about the win as well, that there's so much more to sport than just the outcome. And that's where that joy and that play come in. And within that play, that's where we really grow.
I like that. So it's not less than winning, but it's more than winning. Oh yeah, that's great. Okay, let's go to Tracy, Dr. Trothen. You did a lot here with AI. In fact, you were even testing some of this, right, as you prepared for it, just as far as using those tools. And I was thinking about just the ethical and theological perspectives that lie just implicit and even explicit as you were putting that before us. When we think about just technology, it's doing something to us. It's not just altering the world. So there's this reflexive notion as far as technology that it's forming us. So my question to you is, how do we help faith communities help shape a more just and intentional future for sport?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think, first of all, just talking in faith communities about the technology that's out there, because everybody's now everybody almost has heard of ChatGPT, right? Anyone in here not heard of ChatGPT? Right, it's out there, it's everywhere. Normally we just think of it as a tool to help our students cheat in essay writing. And you know what? I don't find that happens as often as we fear. So I think talking about it in our faith communities, I mean, even getting people to experiment with using a chatbot to create a prayer, to see what it could offer, to see what the pluses are, and then to start imagining, well, how could this interface with sport, with moving our bodies and our health on a physical level? There are some really wonderful ways that it can help to connect people. So how do we want to use it? Because if we're not intentional in faith communities about that, it will be the big businesses and the places where there's lots of pots of money that decide what gets created and then how we use it.
Real quick follow-up question, then we'll go to all of you. I was thinking a book written a long time ago by Langdon Winter, and so it's called The Whale and the Reactor, and it's all about technology. And he says that we kind of, if we're not careful, we get co-opted into sleepwalking with technology. And so you brought up values. How do we resist just adopting the newest and the greatest and not thinking about how that could be misaligned with our Christian virtues, our human virtues and values?
That's a really good question. I think we really need to slow down, because when we hear that the next Apple iPhone is out there, we're told we want it, and we want it now, and we line up for it. And then we think later, well, why did I want this? I think we need to think about these things in advance first, before we get the self-lacing running shoes and we don't have to lace up our shoes anymore. And we're thinking, gee, did I really need that? Could those resources have gone somewhere else? Because we have a finite collection of resources. But if we're not intentional about our values, then we don't go anywhere. I ask my students in classes all the time, have you had a chance to talk about what your values are, what's important to you? And you know, it's probably 90% of them say, no, I've never done that before. So we stop and we talk about your values right now, where they come from, and what shapes those values. And it's funny, right? We could go to church even all the time and be taught in theory these values about loving each other and caring for people who are the least of us, on the edges, who are struggling, being compassionate, and yet we can forget about it immediately when we're confronted with something that's exciting or we're told that we want to consume in our consumeristic world. So we have to slow down.
That's great. All right, let's go to some questions that are coming in. A number of questions. Let's see here. How some of these are probably even generated by AI. How do you balance using AI as a tool without eliminating the Holy Spirit and our humanness entirely? What boundaries can we put in place? So it's kind of riffing maybe a little more what you just said, but I would like to hear what
Kristin might have some insight there.
Oh, well, I mean, the Holy Spirit empowers all of us, right? It's our energy, and so, and this is where humans live, and we say, "Come, Holy Spirit." That's my favorite go-to prayer. So we just have to. I'm not sure what else to say, just to be real and to say, the Holy Spirit is our source of energy.
It is a danger that we could become like the tools that we use, right? It could be reductionistic, boil us down to a series of physiological stats. If we know we don't want to go in that direction entirely, we don't need to. And it can help us. It can improve performance. This is not necessarily a bad thing unless we get so reduced and wrapped up that we forget what it is we love about sport, right?
Okay, this is back to Kristin. What do athletes need most today to be prepared for life, not just victory?
Right. So preparation for life comes, sport is a microcosm of the world, and we have the opportunity to learn so many lessons from sport. And so I think the biggest thing that we want to encourage is that development of resilience through the relationships in the sport experience, because we become more fully human through the relationship building and through that team experience. You know, we don't live alone. It's the old saying, there's no I in team, but we become more fully human when we are in relationship.
Oh, that's great. How do your theological presuppositions shape your approach to AI and ethics in sports? And how does God's revelation inform that framework?
Okay, that's a nice small question. Great question. For me, one of the most important things about the stories of Jesus is the ministry and the prioritizing of the most disadvantaged, right? So with AI, one of the things that is incredibly promising is that if you are a budding athlete and you are in a remote area, you're not able to get access to a really great coach, say, or a trainer, you feel isolated, you don't have the money, there's no resources, AI has the potential to help with that. You can get people, you can get virtual coaches, you can get access through even just a digital platform, right, to some coaches and trainers and feedback. And even if you can't get a real person, you could get an AI coach to get you started at least, or to have that be a supplement. So there are potential ways that we could uphold and help people who have less advantages. For me, it really is, again, a matter of intentionality, right? We have to know what it is we believe and what's important to us, and then we have to work out how to cultivate that and use these technologies in ways that really can help us. And part of that is knowing what's out there, first of all, and then tapping into it. Because right now there are a lot of free or very inexpensive resources.
Great. Back to both of you. Let's start with Kristin. Let's go back to your past a little bit. You played hockey. You were a cheerleader, collegiate athlete. What do you wish someone had told you about your identity as an athlete or your body as a younger person in sport?
Wow. Back to my younger self. I think just focusing on who we are as children of God, right? That our identity is not in our sport, it's not in our position, but it's I am a child of God, and that is intrinsically worthy, especially if we're thinking about, had an opportunity to participate in sport at the collegiate level, and yet that isn't what's most important. It was that I had a team to call my own. Our team still connects together. We have a group chat, and we have a lifelong friendship now from that. And so we are children of God, and that's what I would tell myself.
It's beautiful. I'd like to be on that team. That's encouraging. Yeah.
I love sport and I love hockey. Thanks for bringing that up. When I was in high school, I wanted nothing to do but more than to play hockey, but no one ever trained me or coached me, and I was never very good at sports. So I was really scared too, and there was one league just an hour north, and I finally, after years and years and years, convinced my father to take me to play. And I love skating, but I didn't know how to play the sport, and I did it anyway. And I was abysmal for a long time, and I still did it. And I'd been so afraid of failure before that. So sport in that way helped me to realize that I could do things for joy and not because I was going to be the best in the class or anywhere near to it. So again, affirming that intrinsic worth that we are indeed created in the image of God, and that the lost sheep is always welcome back with no judgment and just joy.
That's great. So here's a question. Before I read it, let me just kind of set this up a little bit because there's a lot behind it. It's only like 7 words long, but it's pretty deep. So you're familiar with C.S. Lewis's book, The Abolition of Man, and he talks about that at mid-century, 20th century, he talks about that there's this push, and he was talking about to condition and control nature, human nature, and he said if we're not careful, we end up abolishing very human nature. And so he's not saying, he wasn't anti-technology, wasn't anti-culture, right? So there's this balance. So here's the question. How might AI help us to be more human? How could it bring fulfillment and flourishing? Because you're not saying no to it, absolutely. You're just saying to be circumspect, to be prudent, one of the virtues that you showed in your growth model. What would you all say about that?
I am concerned that AI could reduce us more to tools. And that is a real concern, I think. But how can it benefit us? Again, I think it's through bringing us together more, through enhancing community. That's going to be the biggest thing potentially. Through healing our injuries faster and helping us to get back in the game, if it's a game we love and we want to get back into it. If it's not, then we have another problem, right? There's always another side. We've all known people who've been injured and secretly been relieved. I don't have to get out there right now. Most people are just really frustrated, but it's complicated. So I do think there are ways to use technology to enhance relationship, to bring us together, to help in healing, to help us be healthier physically as well as relationally. But it is fraught, yeah.
All right, closing up, this is the final question. It's a takeaway question. What is one value or practice that needs to be reclaimed to restore embodied health in sports?
I believe we need to restructure the youth sport system. That when we leave so many children who have come from a lower income family out of the experience, that's really a Christian tragedy. And as Christians, what are we doing to open up our spaces of play for more children? So that if sport is a place of goodness, a place to heal, it's a place where every child should be. And why should we benefit? Why should we profit off of a child's game, off a child's play? We really believe that it's every child's right to play. And so I would say, what are you doing in your community, in your university, in your city to open up spaces for more children to play?
Thanks for your prophetic voice there. You've named it from the beginning as an injustice, and I really appreciate that. Tracy?
I'll echo some of that. Inclusion and interdependence. So important. And if we don't play sport in a way that includes people who are on the edges, then we're not doing it well. We're not doing it from a Christian perspective. There's lots of room for high-level athletes in competition, and there also needs to be lots of room for people who struggle to play and who want to play and who want to be part of community.
Thank you very much. Please join me in thanking Tracy and Kristin.